Welcome to the DragonLance Saga Gaming Advanced Dungeons & Dragons episode. This is the third episode in the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide series. It is Braca, Dark Ember the 27th. My name is Adam. Dragonlance came out of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, so I thought it would be fun to read the core rules aloud and discuss them with a live audience. I'd like to take a moment and thank the members of this channel and invite you to consider becoming a member if you're not one already. You can also pick up Dragonlance gaming materials using my affiliate link. Both of the links are in the description below. And of course, right now, they're having a sale, a sort of Black Friday to Cyber Monday sale on all gaming material over at DM's Guild or Drive-Thru RPG, which is really just the same company. All right, so we left off on Henchmen. So let's pick up there. Henchmen, whether male or female, are greatly desired by the discerning players, for they usually spell the difference between failure and success in long-term view. They are useful in individual adventures as a safety measure against the machinations of rival player characters, provide strength to the character and his or her stronghold, and lastly, serve as a means of adventuring when the player character is unable to. Because they are so useful, and because they are typically so devoted, they are charisma limitations as to how many henchmen a PC is able to attract. Knowing this, the real question for the Dungeon Master is who will be attracted? Where will they be found? When will they come? And what will the cost be? These questions are answered in detail hereafter. Okay, so I've already said this before. Never have I actually played with henchmen or hirelings. We've always just done everything with the playing characters. So I'd really love to get a little bit of perspective on whether anyone out there has actually used the henchmen or hireling systems and if they've actually benefited them in some way. Level of prospective new henchmen. As a general rule, only, you know what, hold on a second. One thing I did not do, which I should have, was titled this. There we go. There we go. As a general rule, only characters of first level of experience will be attracted to service with a player character. If the NPC has already gained a level or more of experience on his or her own, why would the aegis of a PC be sought? If the player character attempted to find an NPC henchman is over 6th level, there's a 10% chance that the character found will be 2nd level and seeking service because of the renown of the PC. If the player character is over 11th level, there's a 25% chance that the NPC will be 3rd level, 25% chance for 2nd level, and 50% for 1st level. Race of prospective henchmen. The locale in which the non-player character henchman is being sought, the racial distribution in that locale, the race of the prospective liege, and the manner of seeking henchmen will all bear upon the race of any possible henchman. Locale and racial distribution. The amount of territory with which the henchman is being sought is of importance, for it determines what character races are available for acquisition. Determine racial percentages that exist within the area and group them into increments of 5%. For example, a large city of 25,000 might be 80% human, 10% half-orc, and 10% all other, dwarf, elf, gnome, halfling, and half-elf. Racial specifications. Unless special note is made that only certain races of adventurers are desired, or the notices and broadsides specifically exclude races, the whole of the population base will be eligible, so random samplings will be attracted. Number of prospective henchmen. Human and half-orc characters suitable for level advancement are found at a ratio of 1 in 100. Other races have an incidence of 1 in 50. However, as most of these characters will be other than low-level adventurers and already in a situation they are satisfied with, any humans more so than other races, unless the development of the area is primarily other than human, about 1 in 1,000 population will be interested in offers of employment as a henchman. Note: this figure must be adjusted by the DM according to the locale, for if it is an active adventuring area, the incidence of prospective henchmen might be as great as 1 in 200, while if it is a settled and stayed area, incidence might be as low as 1 in 5,000. effective location of henchmen. While there might be as many as 25 or more prospective henchmen in a city of 25,000 sighted above, the player characters desirous of locating one or more for service must be able to reach the NPCs in order to let them know there is a henchman position available. In order to get this sort of information around, there are several methods which can be used singularly or in combination. So I'm going to show you this here real quick here. And I love this little cartoon here. So the method of posting notices in public, hiring a crier, hiring agents to seek prospects, and frequent inns and taverns. And then their costs and effectiveness. But you got to see this little piece of art here. Dave, get the barbarian in the corner a drink, quick! Okay. Each method can be tried but once a month with any hope of success. Reduce the percentage chance of effectiveness of each method by 5% when used in combination. This reflects the duplication of effort. The special cost for the frequenting inns and taverns is a combination of the price of a round of drinks for the house and a fee to the barkeep to mention the prospective employer to adventurers. For each 10 gold pieces, 50 gold piece maximum of fee, there is a 1% to 4% chance of reaching a henchman. And I've never really thought about this before, but it makes perfect sense because usually it's the playing characters who are the henchmen doing a job on behalf of some other individual, right? So the player characters often will find themselves in a tavern or a bar and they will hear rumor of someone hiring someone to go do something, right? This adventures for hire trope. But we could just do the exact same thing for henchmen. And, why wouldn't you? But it just I never thought of it that way. Up to 10 establishments can be so worked, but for each visited, the effectiveness of the others is reduced by 1%. Therefore, the PCs had better spend in excess of 20 gold pieces in payments to innkeepers and barkeeps if he or she is planning to try this method in more than a few establishments. Example, the PC decides to try a media blitz to find a henchman. He posts notices and gets a 30% effectiveness, hires a crier who is 3% effective, hires agents who are 30% effective, and spends 500 gold pieces in fees in inns and taverns to get an average 15% effectiveness after overlap. The total coverage is 30% plus 3% plus 30% plus 15% equaling 78% minus 15%. Use of 3 methods beyond the first at minus 5% per method equals 63% final total effectiveness. Assume 65% of the total eligible NPC henchman characters will seek service. Whatever final percentage figure is arrived at, this is multiplied by the total available non-playing characters available as henchmen. Use proportions for racial types, unless the methods of informing prospective NPCs neglected some area where a specific race is concentrated. This seems so incredibly difficult just to get a henchman. Like so many hoops to jump through. I wonder if there's if you go to a city like Palanthas, right? There has to be, or maybe even Sanction, I don't know where you land on in your alignment systems here. But there's got to be agencies, in the same way you have marketing and advertising agencies in real life. There's got to be these marketing and advertising agencies that specifically target henchmen. They've got the Mad Men of henchmen out there. You got to get your Don Draper in Palanthas to create a creative campaign for you to hire henchmen. So they basically brand you as the heroes and stuff. It'd be kind of fun to just, do a little side playthrough of just the advertising campaign to see if it, okay, now that I'm thinking about this, because I work in advertising, it would be fun for me. I think for regular players, it'd probably be boring as shit. But it'd be kind of funny, I think. I don't know. Anyway, I guess my point is, you don't always have to just run things on the numbers alone, as a playing character and as a dungeon master. I think it's really important to add story to the back end of some of these things. Role play it. Have a little bit of fun in the moment rather than just saying, well, I got a 68% possibility. Here's my role. And just let that be it. Have some fun with it. Length of time required for responses. It will take from 2 to 8 days for all prospective henchmen who are going to apply to locate the player characters and seek him or her out to apply for the job. During this time period, the PC must remain in the place he or she made known as the spot to go for employment. Failure to do so will result in a loss of any applicants coming that day and each day thereafter he or she is not available. When the total number of applicants coming are known by you, divide this number by the number of days during which notice is getting around, 2 to 8, and this will give the number of applicants per day. Always have any odd numbers remaining come during the first or second day. Treatment of prospective henchmen. When a character arrives for employment, it is considered poor manners to expel him or her in any way, except possibly in the case of no alignment or detect good or evil, to say nothing of physically searching him or her. Direct questions about alignment and religion are usually taken poorly. Classes of prospective henchmen. Of the total number of prospective characters who are capable of working upwards in level, the distribution of class will be as follows. And again, we have a bit of a table here. You can see that right here: clerics, fighters, magic users, and thieves, and your percentages for each. Non-human characters located will have 2 classes if they have scores of 14 or greater in 2 major ability areas. 3 classes if they have ability scores of 14 or greater in 3 major areas, which match up with those of classes which they are able to work in simultaneously. Exception. These races which can work only in 2 professions at once will not be exceptional, and regardless of their ability scores, they can work in only as many classes as stated in the player's handbook. Cost of successful employment. In addition to the cost of getting prospective henchmen to seek employment, the player character desires to hire one or more of them must be prepared to make a substantial offer which is comprised of the following considerations. Initial payment. Not less than 100 gold pieces per level of the applicant must be offered. This will give a base of 25% interest in accepting the position. For each additional 100 gold piece, interest increases 10% to a maximum of 55%. And this actually makes me think how, if you are a player and you go to a tavern and you hear about someone wanting to hire someone, this gives you a good down payment on what it would cost, to provide to the players as compensation. Like, hey, you can pick up, you can keep 10% of any gold or treasure you find in the adventure that I'm hiring you for, and I will pay you a base of 100 gold plus per level of applicant. And I think that's a really good starting point for an adventure. Of course, if we're on Krynn, we're going to be referencing steel and not gold, but the point stands. Equipment. The prospective henchman must be provided with complete equipment according to his or her class or classes. Any magic items included will make the character more interested in accepting the position, assuming he or she can use such items, of course. For each magic item, exclude arrows except in groups of 5, increase the interest by 15%. Quarters and support. The PC must offer reasonable housing and promise free food and clothing as needed to the prospective henchman. This simply adds 5% to interest level when offered, but failure to promise such quarters and support will lower interest by 25%. Activity and shares. The player character must state what amount of activity the prospective henchman will be given, and what duties and position is envisioned for him or her. Furthermore, the prospective henchman must be told what share of treasure he or she can expect from adventuring, and what division of magic items can be expected. Characteristics of henchmen. The characteristics, including alignment of NPC applicants, are discussed under the section Persona of Non-Player Characters. You, as DM, can decide how best to reveal all of this information to the PC, some by relating what is seen, some by actually playing the role of the applicant. If the character asks specific questions, remember that the applicant might take this amiss. Acceptance of employment. When the basic level of interest is found and characteristics discovered, roll percentile dice if the PC states a desire to accept the applicant as a henchman. according to the player character's charisma reaction adjustment to this interest level, and if the dice score does not exceed interest and charisma reaction adjustment, the NPC accepts employment. And I gotta show you the little illustrations every time I run across them. Hiring the NPC. Equipment of henchmen. All henchmen will come with nothing except the normal clothes they wear. Although they will have a few copper and silver coins, they will have nothing of value, no armors or weapons, nothing. Their wretched state is, in fact, one of the prime motivations for their seeking employment with a successful adventurer. Exceptional henchmen. From time to time, player characters will manage to capture or otherwise have in their power characters of higher than second level. This in itself is of no consequence, but what if the player character then makes an offer of henchman status to the other character? If the non-player character is more than 2 levels greater than the player character, only associate status, possibly for but one adventure or undertaking, perhaps for 2, will be accepted, regardless of the amount of inducement offered. If the player character is from 2 levels lower to 2 levels greater than the player character, the NPC will consider only offers of becoming a temporary hireling or an associate for 1 to 4 weeks or adventures or undertakings. If the non-player character is 3 or more levels under the level of the player character, he or she will consider the offer, but all of the normal requirements of the offer and acceptance must be handled as usual. If the offer is forced, do it or else you die, etc., the loyalty of the henchman will be that of a slave. It will be that of captured and enlisted, unless a considerable sum of additional money or considerations of magic are given. Such exceptional henchmen are the sole exception to the rule that henchmen come unequipped, as they might well have considerable goods. Loyalty of henchmen and hirelings, obedience and morale. The loyalty of all non-playing characters associated with a given player character depends upon many factors. First and foremost is the charisma of the PC, of course. This initial loyalty is modified by subsequent factors and the continuing relations between liege and his or her henchmen and hirelings. Loyalty is important when trouble arises, whether it is some insidious plot from within, a challenge from a rival, or in adventures or warfare. Typical situations will require a check for loyalty, obedience, or morale are shown hereafter. Checks are made by adjustment of the base loyalty score due to the PC's charisma rating. The final total is compared to the result of the percentile dice, and if the total is less than the number shown on the dice, the figure or figures in question are disloyal, disobedient, or have poor morale. Typical loyalty, obedience, and morale check situations. All right, so there is a massive chart here that flips over to the other side of the page as well. But you can see all of the different situations and what it means for failure to meet those. And there's a bunch like, ordered to rescue a liege or in combat with possibly dangerous foe. And we go back to the top here, and you can see a couple more up here at the top. And it gives you your normal loyalty base is 50% plus or minus your charisma adjustment. And then the table for loyalty of henchmen and allied creatures here. And you can see the loyalty levels from none, disloyal, little, fair, loyal, or fanatical, and the adjusted loyalty score based on that. And then, of course, your loyalty-based modifiers, enlistment or association, and length of enlistment or association, with an asterisk of this includes time between service or length of time that the player character has been generally known and familiar to the figures in question. And then we've got a couple more here, training or status level and their modifiers, pay or treasure shared with their modifiers, the asterisk under exceptional bonuses, gift items being typically magic items if a henchman is concerned. And then discipline activity and the modifiers there. So there is a pretty robust henchman percentage system based on how you treat them and stuff like that. I've never even considered any of this as a player. So it applies only when the liege is not present, is incapacitated or dead. If the liege is near and in power, minuses are treated as pluses. Otherwise, treat as 0% adjustment fear. So I guess you start out with a base modifier that you've, earned by hiring this henchman. And then as time goes by, as situations arise, and as you have engagements, you have to change the modifiers and change how it feels. It is one of those things where you could just focus on building rapport with your henchmen, or just disregard them and do your thing and see what happens. But I guess this percentage modifier is going to have to be tracked by your dungeon master, which is just one more thing that the DM is going to have to, focus on, which can already seem insurmountable to some people. And then we actually have a little bit more here with racial preferences at the very top. Note, preference adjustments are cumulative, but only with regard to liege and associates, and with respect to the latter group, only the most disliked or most liked are counted. And then alignment factors. Alignment of liege modifiers, special consideration modifiers. Note, apply only one penalty and one bonus maximum, whichever of either category is the higher for these special considerations. And then situational modifiers. When all modifying factors have been checked, adjust the base loyalty and roll a percentile dice as noted above. If you are certain of your DM ability, most of these factors should be apparent without actually checking them, simply by empathizing with the character or group in question and having them act accordingly. Until you are absolutely certain, however, it is urged that you use these tables. The rules should be used in conjunction with those given under morale in combat. All right, now we move to the next. Time. Time. Everywhere there's time. Not signs, time. Time in a campaign. Game time is of utmost importance. Failure to keep careful track of time expenditure by player characters will result in many anomalies in the game. The stricture of time is what makes recovery of hit points meaningful. Likewise, the time spent adventuring in wilderness areas removes concerned characters from their bases of operation, be they rented chambers or battlemented strongholds. Certainly, the most important time stricture pertains to the manufacture of magic items, for during the period of such activity, no adventuring can be done. This is also considered in gaining levels and learning new languages and more. All of these demands upon game time force choices upon player characters, and likewise number their days of game life. One of the things stressed in the original game of Dungeons & Dragons was the importance of recording game time with respect to each and every player character in a campaign. In advanced Dungeons & Dragons, it is emphasized even more. You cannot have a meaningful campaign if strict time records are not kept. Use whatever grouping of days you find desirable for your milieu. There is nothing wrong with 7-day weeks and 31 to 30 and 28 to 29 day months, which exactly correspond to our real system. On the other hand, there's nothing to prevent you from using some other system if it pleases you and you can keep it straight. What is important to the campaign is that you do, in fact, maintain a time record with logs and activities and whereabouts of player characters and their henchmen. For Dragonlance, the easiest way of doing this is just to keep track of the phases of the moon. Have a little cheat sheet of whatever the background is of your character, Salamnik or whatever, and just, have the days of the month and have the names of the days, and just use that moon tracking chart to play the game and to keep track of time. For the sake of example, let us assume that you begin your campaign on day 1 of the year 1000. There are 4 player characters who begin initially, and they have adventures which last a total of 50 days, 6 days of actual adventuring and 44 days of resting and other activity. At this point in time, 2 new players join the game. One of the original group decides to go to seek the advice of an oracle after hiring an elven henchman, and the remaining 3, old boys, decide they will not go with the newcomers. So, on day 51, player A's character is off on a journey. Those of B, C, and D are resting in their laurels, and E and F enter the dungeon. The latter pair spend the better part of the day surviving, but do well enough to rest a couple of game days and return for another try on day 54, when they stumble upon the worst monster in the first level, surprise it, and manage to slay it and come out with a handsome treasure. You pack it in for the night for actual days later, and it is best to use one actual day equals one game day with no plays happening. On day 55, player characters B, C, and D enter the dungeon and find that the area they selected has already been cleaned out by player characters E and F. Had they come the day after the previous game session, game day 52, and done the same thing, they would have found the monster and possibly gotten the goodies. What to do about that? And what about old A and his pointy-eared chum off to see the Oracle? Some penalty must accrue to the non-active, but on the other hand, the overactive cannot be given the world on a silver platter. Despite time differences, the activities of the newcomers to the campaign should be allowed to stand as destiny has decreed that the monster in question could not fall to the characters B, C, and D. Therefore, the creature was obviously elsewhere, not dead, when they visited its lair on day 52, but it had returned on day 56. Being aware of these differences between groups of player characters will enable you to prevent the big problems. You will know when adventuring of one such group has gone far enough ahead in game time to call a halt. This is particularly true with regard to town dungeon adventures. Return to player character A in his trek to visit a far-off source of supernatural lore. He and his elven companions set off on day 51, journey across the land for 11 days, visit the Oracle and remain 3 days, then come back after another 11 days, wonder of wonders. This comes to a total of 25 days all told, counting day 51, so they come home on day 75 and are set to adventure on day 77. Let us suppose as a brief rest is in order. Allowing that activity to be not unusual for a single session of play, then player characters A and his henchmen are ready to play about the same actual time as the other players. Only A is at day 77, B, C, and D are at day 54, and E and F are at day 58. The middle group must go first and alone, or it can opt to sit around, waiting for A and E and F, or for both parties. Or they can operate alone for another short adventure in terms of game time, thus taking advantage of their temporal position. Other options include any of the players singly or in time-related groups going off on outdoor adventures. In the case of players so segregating their characters, it then becomes necessary for you as DM to inform prospective participants in a game session that there is a hiatus which will necessitate only certain members of the number playing together, and their respective characters cannot locate the others of these separated groups. At this juncture, they should be informed of their options, and if players B, C, and D do not choose to take advantage of their favored position, then game time will pass more swiftly for them, as the other participants must be allowed to adventure in the dungeon if they so desire. Thus, players E and F would have the choice of awaiting the return of A or of going on adventures which involve only the two characters. In effect, player character A is out of the game until A is out of it until game time in the central playing area reaches day 75, when communications can be made, or until other player characters contact him on his return from the Oracle. Let us say, assuming nothing important transpired during the return trip. In effect, the key is the relative importance of the player character's actions in the time frame. Generally, time passes day for day, or turn for X number of real minutes during active play. Players who choose to remove their characters from the center of a dungeon activity will find that a lot has happened while they were away, as adventurers in the wilderness certainly use up game days with rapidity, while the shorter time scale of dungeon adventuring allows many game sessions during a month or two of game time. Of course, this might mean that the players involved in the outdoors someplace will either have to come home to sit around or continue adventuring in wildernesses and perhaps in some distant dungeon as well, if you're so kind. Otherwise, they will perforce be excluded from game sessions, which are taking place during a period of game time in which they were wandering about in the countryside doing other things. This latter sanction must certainly applies to characters learning a new language, studying and training for promotion in level, or off someplace manufacturing magic items. At some point, Even the stay-at-homes will be forced to venture forth into the wilderness due to need, geese, quest, or possibly to escape the wrath of something better avoided. The timelines of various player characters will diverge, meet, and diverge again over the course of game years. This makes for interesting campaigns and helps form the history of the milieu. Groups of players tend to segregate themselves for a time, some never returning to the ken of the rest, most eventually coming back to reform into different bands. As characters acquire henchmen, the better players will express a desire to operate some of theirs independently while they or their liege lord are away. This is a perfectly acceptable device, for it tends to even out characters and the game. Henchmen tend to become associates or rivals this way, although a few will remain as colorless servitors. You may ask why time is so important if it causes such difficulties with record keeping, dictates who can or cannot go adventuring during a game session, and disperses player characters to the four winds by its strictures. Well, as initially pointed out, it is a necessary penalty imposed on characters for certain activities. Beyond that, it also gives players yet another interesting set of choices and consequences. The latter tends to bring more true-to-life quality to the game, as some characters will use precious time to their utmost advantage, while some will treat it lightly, and some will be constantly wasting it to their complete detriment. Time is yet another facet which helps to separate the superior players from the lesser ones. If timekeeping is a must from a penalty standpoint, it is also an interesting addition from a standpoint of running a campaign. Time in the dungeon. Keeping track of time in the dungeon, or on any other type of adventure, is sometimes difficult, but it is at least as important as the accurate recordings of time in the campaign. As has been mentioned elsewhere, the standard time breakdown is 10 one-minute rounds to the turn and 6 turns to the hour. All referees should keep a side record of time on a separate sheet of paper, marking off the turns as they pass. Melees or other actions which result in fractional turns should be rounded up to make them complete turns. It is essential that an accurate time record be kept so that the DM can determine when to check for wandering monsters, and in order to keep a strict check on the duration of some spells, such as Bless, Haste, Strength, etc. The DM must also know how long it has been since the last time the party took a rest. A party should be required to rest at least one turn in 6. Remember, the average party packs a lot of equipment, and in addition, they should rest a turn after every time they engage in combat or any other strenuous activity. On occasion, a party may wish to cease movement and hole up for a long period, perhaps overnight, resting and recuperating or recovering spells. This does not exempt them from occasional checks for wandering monsters, though the frequency may be moderated somewhat depending on conditions. Too frequent interruptions may make spell recovery impossible. Keeping correct records for durations of these periods is absolutely essential. How, I guess, maybe anal is the word I'm looking for. How anal are you guys about keeping time records? Because during the course of an encounter, I'm very strict because you have to work off of initiatives, right? But outside of the encounter and outside of wandering monsters or, stuff like that, I kind of just let it flow. I'm not really strict. We'll do abstracts like, okay, well, day and night, because that's easy to track by the sun unless you're in a dungeon, in which case, if you're a dwarf or, maybe a halfling or something, or a gnome, maybe you have some other internal biological mechanism because you don't have to worry about that day and night, and you've just sort of come to terms with how to process that internally as a race, but I've never been this strict about it, like ever. And even to the point of sometimes I don't make magic users track the phases of the moon, but instead just roll what the phase is during a particularly important encounter. I don't know. I think it's interesting how different people manage time in their games. But we are on the next segment. Character spells. Day-to-day acquisition of cleric spells. It is well known to all experienced players that clerics, unlike magic users, have their spells bestowed upon them by their respective deities. By meditation and prayer, the cleric receives especially empowered words which form the various spells possible for them. Although, as with the spells of magic users, the utterance of any given set of key sounds not only causes the desired spell to take effect, but it likewise wipes the memory of the sound from the mind of the utterer, as each set of sounds is an energy trigger. See spell casting. Of utmost importance, then, is the relationship between cleric and deity. Each cleric must have his or her own deity, so when a new player opts to become a cleric, including a druid, you must inform them as to which deities exist in your campaign milieu and allow them, the individual, to select which one of them he or she will serve. This will not necessarily establish the alignment of the cleric, so at the same time, the cleric player character should also state his or her ethos, not necessarily to the other players. It is then assumed that prior to becoming a first-level cleric, the player character receives a course of instruction, served a novitiate, and has thoroughly read and committed to memory the teachings of and prayers to his or her chosen deity, so that the character is dedicated to his deity and able to perform as a cleric thereof. It is this background which enables the cleric character to use first-level spells. Furthermore, continued service and activity on behalf of the player character's deity empowering him or her to use second-level spells as well, but thereafter another agency must be called upon. Cleric spells of 3rd, 4th, and 5th level are obtained through the aid of supernatural servants of the cleric's deity, that is, through meditation and prayer. The cleric's needs are understood, and the proper spells are given to him or her by the minions of the deity. I've never thought of this before. I've never played it like this before. Especially in Dragonlance, because the gods are so in tune and so connected with all of the player's actions in a campaign, and in the background of the world specifically, that I never thought of a servant of the god being the one that grants the spells of 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and that just inherently because you worship them, 1st and 2nd level spells are granted to you. It brings a different dimension to the gameplay. I could see applying that to after the Dark Disciple trilogy, when, spoiler here, when Paladin and Takhisis are no more, and Mina ascends to godhood, then, you have people like Chemish, who are incredibly interactive with bringing the undead and stuff. Maybe an acolyte of them, I don't know, an avatar aspect possibly, but maybe just a high-level worshiper is the one who then comes and grants you power on their behalf and is sort of that intermediary between you and your god. Interesting. Cleric spells of 6th and 7th level are granted by direct communication from the deity itself. There is no intermediary in this case, and the cleric has a direct channel to the deity, for whom he or she receives the special power to cast these spells of these levels. Lesser clerics then draw only upon their education, training, and experience to gain spells, just as higher clerics do when they renew their 1st and 2nd level spells. In order to gain 3rd, 4th, and 5th level spells, however, higher clerics must reach intermediaries of their respective deities in order to have these powers bestowed upon them from the plane of their deity. When clerics become very great, they must petition their deity personally in order to receive the power words which enable the casting of 6th and 7th level cleric spells. It is obvious, therefore, that clerics wishing to use 3rd or higher level spells must be in good standing. Yeah, just like the Holy Order of the Stars. There's temples to all the different gods all throughout Krynn, so it makes sense that you would want to, upon achieving a new level, make a pilgrimage to honor not only the god, but the order itself in which you are a member. Yeah, I like that. If they have not been faithful to their teachings, following the aims of the deity, contributed freely to that cause, and otherwise acted according to the tenets of their faith, it becomes unlikely that they will receive intermediary aid unless they make proper atonement and sacrifice. There can be no question that such clerics must be absolutely exemplary in their activities, expressions, and attitudes if they dare to contact their deity directly. In the former case, when the unfaithful cleric desires 3rd through 5th level spells, the minions, angels, demigods, or whatever, will be likely to require the cleric to spend 2 to 8 days in prayer, fasting, and contemplation of his or her transgressions, making whatever sacrifices and atonement are necessary thereafter, before freely granting those powers once again. Sacrifice and atonement will probably be left to the discretion of the cleric, and it is possible that the minions of the deity will empower him or her with spells to complete these steps, but the cleric had better work to do the correct thing or face the consequences. In the latter case, when the unfaithful cleric desires spells above 5th level, the deity is certainly going to be highly displeased and absolute. The deity, you the DM, will point out all of the transgressions, state a course of action which must be followed to regain good graces, grant the spells which the deity deems are necessary to complete the course, but never in excess of those which the cleric could normally use, and pronounce anathema upon the cleric until satisfactory redemption has been made, i.e., the cleric cannot again call upon any help from his or her deity or its minions until he or she has regained favor through a course prescribed by the deity. A cleric who at this or any juncture changes deities is going to have a difficult time. His or her former deity will mark the cleric. The new deity and associated minions will be suspicious. Once a cleric changes deities, he or she must thereafter be absolutely true to the new calling, or he or she will be snuffed out by some godlike means. King priest, anyone? It is 90% unlikely that the cleric's first deity will accept him or her back into the fold after falling away, unless some special redemptive agency is involved. There is no salvation for a thrice-changed cleric. He or she is instantly killed. Any change of alignment which causes such a deity change is applicable, unless the change is involuntary. See changing alignment. Note that the above applies to paladins with respect to their clerical spell powers and to rangers with respect to their druidical cleric spell powers. This actually made me think of the king priest in the fact that he stood up against the gods, saying that he should be granted the power of a god himself. You had people who were eternally punished for not going through and stopping or even standing up to the king priest in the form of Lord Soth, but nothing actually happened to the king priest himself. It's kind of messed up, isn't it? Like, Paladin has two characters in front of him. One is someone who is literally challenging his own position as the god of good on Krynn and demanding that he be made a god himself. And the other is given an opportunity to redeem himself by facing the king priest and killing him. One fails to do so, so he's punished eternally. The other one stands up to the gods, demands, and he gets a rock thrown on him. But that's it. Like, that's the extent of it. One is eternally punished, and the other is just dead. That hardly seems fair to me. I kind of feel like the king priest should have suffered some undead or otherwise eternal fate for having the gall to stand up to the gods. I mean, Raisel Manjir stood up to the gods, and he was basically sent to the abyss to just dwell there for all eternity in rest, right? In the abyss of all horrible places, until he was woken up by the Palin's test of high sorcery. And then ultimately, you know, the only reason why he wasn't being tortured in the abyss by the Takesis, the Queen of Darkness, is because he sacrificed his life, and that was enough. The king priest never did anything like that. So he should have been tormented too. That's right. The king priest got off easy just by getting a rock thrown on him. All right. Acquisition of magic user spells. Inform those players who have opted for the magic user profession that they have just completed a course of apprenticeship with a master who is of unthinkably high level, at least 6th. Having been a relative apt pupil, working diligently and made every effort to please master or mistress, as the case may be, was kind enough to prepare a special present for the character before he or she goes out into the world to seek his or her fortune. At this juncture, request the player to ready a piece of paper which will go into his or her records as a permanent fixture. Instruct the player to entitle the page First Level Spells Known. While the intelligence of the player character will dictate how many and which spells can be and are known, this knowledge is not automatic. each and every spell, except those which Master was generous enough to bestow upon the character, must be found somewhere and recorded in the character's spell books. Thus, if Redulent the Prestidigitator, Intelligence 15, has a repertoire of 7 spells and finds a scroll with yet another, there is a 65% chance that the spell can be understood by that worthy. If, in fact, it can be comprehended, Redolent must then record this spell in his book, thus destroying that portion of the scroll, of course, and he is now the proud possessor of 8 first-level spells, just 3 short of the maximum he'll be able to know. Returning to the recently completed apprenticeship, let us now consider the spells given to Redolent by his wise old master. Obviously, an apprentice must know how to read magic to be able to use to his master. To be of use to his master. It is also an absolute must that anyone following the profession of magic user, so that spell is automatically on each magic user's character list of known spells. Then select by random means 1 spell each from the offensive, defensive, and miscellaneous categories listed below. Redolent, or any other player character magic user, will then have a total of 4. Count them, 4 spells with which to seek his or her fortune. Wow. I feel like I've been playing this game wrong my entire youth. The more I read this. Wow, yeah, so let me show you this chart here. So a beginner mage is given these spells by their master, and they only get 4 no matter what. So from the offensive, you got Burning Hands, Charm Person, Enlargement, Friends, Light, Magic Missile, Push, Shock and Grasp, Sleep. And then you can just choose if you roll a 0 on the D10. Defensive spells, affect normal fires, Dancing Light, Feather Fall, Hold Portal, Jump, Protection from Evil, Shield, Spider Climb, Ventriloquism. And then miscellaneous is Comprehend Language, Detect Magic, Erase, Find Familiar, Identify, Mending, Message, Unseen Servant, and Write. Gosh, this makes me want to play this game so bad. That's awesome. All right. Choice should be left to the player. Okay, so that's nice at least. Note that both Nistel's Magic Aura and Tensor's Floating Disc must be located by the player. They can never be known at the start. If your campaign is particularly difficult, you may wish to allow choice automatically. You can furthermore allow an extra defensive or miscellaneous spell so the character begins with 5 spells. Acquisition of Illusionists spells. Illusionists do not need the spell Read Magic or anything like it in pursuit of their profession. And illusionist spellbooks and scrolls are written in a secret tongue, which every apprentice learns from his or her mentor. This arcane and difficult language is common to all phantasmal magics and is necessary for illusionistic conjuring. When an illusionist gains Read Magic at the 14th level, along with several other first-level magic user spells, this merely allows him to or her to utilize magic user scrolls that contain spells different from those on the illusionists list. When a first-level illusionist receives his first-level spellbook from his master, it should contain only 3 spells, Read Magic being unnecessary. The DM should require the player's character to roll a d12 on the table of first-level illusionist spells, rolling 3 times and ignoring any rolls that result in duplication. If a DM feels his or her campaign is unusually difficult, he or she may allow the player character to choose 1 or even 2 of these initial spells. Spells beyond those at start. Naturally, magic user player characters will do their utmost to acquire books of spells and scrolls in order to complete their own spellbooks, i.e. Raceland and Baxtharkaz. In Zaxxaroth. To those acquired, the magic user will add 1 and only 1 spell which he or she actually gains an experience level. Therefore, most will be frantically attempting to purchase or cozen spells from non-player character magic users, or even from other player character magic users. How you handle NPC magic users is of utmost importance. There is a special section of the rules regarding non-player characters, and you should follow that suggestion therein carefully. By doing so, players will find that their magic user characters are unable to acquire new spells, at worst, or must pay so dearly for them in money, magic items, and quests that the game is hardly worth the candle. Of course, they will pay the price nonetheless, and that will help you maintain the campaign as fresh and challenging, as it will rid it of excess treasure and give player characters reason to adventure at the same time. Superior players will certainly cooperate, thus spells in all probability will be exchanged between PC magic users to some extent. No special sanction needs to be taken to prevent such exchange, although the cooperation should never be suggested or otherwise encouraged either. The DM should leave this interaction strictly alone. This is not the case when PCs deal with NPC henchmen or hirelings. Non-playing character hirelings and henchmen will absolutely refuse to cooperate freely with player characters, and even their own masters or mistresses. Again, this matter is dealt with separately under the section pertaining to the DM's role in operating henchmen and hirelings. As a general rule, they will require value plus a bonus when dealing with their liege. If they will deal with other PCs or NPCs at all, they will require double value plus a considerable bonus. For example, Thygru Thorkesson, magician in the hire of Olaf Bluecheeks, a 10th level lord, knows the spell Suggestion, and Olaf's associate, Halfdan the Necromancer, requests that he be allowed to copy this spell into his book of 3rd level spells. If Olaf is willing, Halfdan can approach Thygru. If Halfdan has been at least civil to the magician, Thygru will ask nothing more than a 3rd level spell in return, plus another spell, plus some minor magic items such as a set of 3 potions, a scroll of 3 spells, or perhaps a ring of invisibility. If Halfdan had formally insulted the magician, then the price would be more dear. But supposing the necromancer has actually saved Thygru's life at one time, the cost would be reduced by but a spell exchange and a single potion or scroll of 1 spell. Naturally, the personality of the henchman or hireling would modify the bargain to some extent. A very avaricious or greedy NPC will ask for more magic items and or gold too. As a good DM, you will have developed the characters of each henchman and hireling to the extent that such determinations will be relatively easy. Finally, the ramifications of spell scarcity are bound to aid your campaign, and not only with regard to excess treasure and magic items. A scroll of but a single spell becomes highly meaningful to the magic users in the game, especially when it is of a spell heretofore unknown. The acquisition of a book of spells from someplace in the dungeon or wilderness of the campaign is a benison beyond price. PC and NPC alike will take great pains to guard scrolls and spellbooks. Magic users will haunt dusty libraries and peruse musty tomes in the hopes of gleaning but a single incantation to add to their store of magic. I love this idea, and I've always, if memory serves anyway, run it in this manner. Because otherwise, at low levels, magic users are really, really challenging to play. You have to rely on your fellow player characters or henchmen or hirelings because they're just too squishy. At higher levels, magic users are nearly unstoppable. They are so incredibly powerful. And so this challenge in getting to those unstoppable levels, I think, is really important. And not only then stresses the earned sensation that the player character has, that sense of satisfaction in gameplay, but also, you have this journey, this entire history that you had to go through to get to where you are. That's why I think we love Raistlin Majir so much, because we watched him grow up literally through the novels from being a sickly infant to someone who challenged the gods themselves. And that rate of growth as a magic user is so incredibly fun to role play. And it's why every player character who does play a magic user, who does make it past 3rd level and more, they feel so arrogant and powerful because they had to struggle more than arguably the traditional fighter had to. Recovery of spells. Spell recovery, whether cleric, druid, or magic user illusionist, requires about the same period of time. In order to pray and meditate for a new spell to replace the one used, or in order to study and memorize such a spell, it's necessary that the spell user rest and revitalize his or her mental faculties. Whether one or more spells are to be regained, the minimum time required for complete rest, usually sleep, is that required for the highest spell to be recovered. Minimum rest periods are shown below. So let's take a look at this really quick. So you have your spell level and the rest time. And depending on the spell level you want to memorize, it shows you how many hours. Thus, if a cleric or magic user needs only memorize first or second level spells, he or she only needs sleep for 4 hours and will then be able to memorize or regain as many such spells as he or she is normally entitled to. On the other hand, if the character in question also wishes to include a 7th level spell, rest time would be 10 full hours. And even though but a single 7th level spell were to be thus regained, while half a dozen 2nd level spells were also to be regained. Once rested, an additional 1/4 hour per level of spell must be spent in study or prayer and meditation in order to memorize, acquire the ability to cast each spell. Spell casting. All magic and cleric spells are similar in that the word sounds, when combined into whatever patterns are applicable, are charged with energy from the positive or negative material plane. When uttered, these sounds cause the release of this energy, which in turn triggers a set reaction. The release of the energy contained in these words is what causes the spell to be forgotten or the writing to disappear from the surface upon which it is written. The triggering action draws power from some plane of the multiverse. Whether the spell is an abjuration, conjuration, alteration, enchantment, or whatever, there is a flow of energy. First from the spell caster, then from some plane to the area magicked, or enspelled by the caster. The energy flow is not from the caster per se, it is from the utterance of the sounds, each of which is charged with energy, which is loosed when the proper formula and or ritual is completed with their utterance. This power then taps the desired plane, whether or not the spell user has any idea of what or where it is, to cause the spell to function. It is much like plugging in a heater. The electrical outlet does not hold all of the electrical energy to cause the heater to function, but the wires leading from it, ultimately to the power station, bring the electricity to the desired location. This is actually in stark contrast to the way that DragonLance presents it. Because that's the madness of magic, right? The addiction of magic is that it literally flows through you. It's almost orgasmic for Raistlin and Dalamar and Palin as they reflect on it at different times throughout the saga. I mean, the sensation of the magic flowing through you is what feeds your obsession to become a more powerful magician. That tease of the power from the gods of magic. This is saying that no, it does not flow through you at all. It's the words that you're using. That's what triggers the magic. And that's a wholly different way of looking at it. I think it's interesting. Let's see, where was I? Many spells also require somatic motions in conjunction with words. The spoken words trigger the release of a magical energy, and the hand movements are usually required in order to control and specify the direction, target area, etc. of the spell effects. When spell energy is released, it usually flows to the prime material from the positive or negative material plane. To replace it, something must flow back in reverse. The dissolution and destruction of material components provides the energy that balance out this flow through the principle of similarity. Sometimes this destruction is very slow, as is the case with the druid's mistletoe. Those spells without apparent material components are actually utilizing the air exhaled by the magic user in the utterance of the spell. Release of word or sound stored energy is not particularly debilitating to the spellcaster, as he or she has gathered this energy over a course of time prior to the loosing of the power. It comes from outside the spellcaster, not from his or her own vital essence. The power to activate even a first level spell would leave a spellcaster weak and shaking if it were drawn from his or her personal energy, and a third level spell would most certainly totally drain the caster's body of life. This is interesting because that's exactly how they explain it in Dragonlance, is that you do become weakened by the exertion. Because spells tap power from other planes, any improper casting is likely to cause the spell not to function. The heater is turned on, but you haven't plugged it in, or you've plugged it in but not turned it on. Or to malfunction, you held out the prongs of the plug where you tapped the current, or you accidentally dropped the heater as you were plugging it in, or perhaps you plugged in some other appliance or device by mistake. Such happenings are covered in the various chances for spell malfunction. If your players inquire as to how spells work, or fail to do so, you can explain without difficulty the precepts of the advanced Dungeons & Dragons magical spell systems. For background reading, you can directly campaign participants to Vance's The Eyes of the Overworld and The Dying Earth, as well as Bellier's The Face in the Frost. Tribal Spellcasters. Tribal spellcasters are found amongst the following races of creatures: bugbears, cavemen, ettins, giants, gnolls, goblins, hobgoblins, kobolds, lizard men, ogres, orcs, troglodytes, and trolls. These spellcasters are divided into two types: shamans and witch doctors. Shamans are tribal clerics of 7th level or under. Shamans have only the following spells and reverse, if applicable, which they are able to cast. And this is the spell list for all shamans. Note that wisdom does not affect the number of spells of tribal clerics, and the number of spells any such tribal cleric possesses is determined as if the shaman were a character of the appropriate level. There is a limit, according to the race of the shaman, as to how many levels of experience he or she can possess. And we have a chart here for that as well. So 3rd level maximum, 5th level maximum, and 7th level maximum for each different casting type. Witch doctors are tribal cleric or magic users. In addition to the maximum level of cleric ability noted above, witch doctors of various races are able to use the following spells and the reverse if applicable. And of course, I missed showing you this wonderful little illustration here. But also, so you see your 1st and 2nd level spells of witch doctors. The maximum level of magic user is dependent upon the race of the witch doctor, and it shows the different species that are possible and the different maximums of race. The asterisk for cavemen is cavemen tribes have normal cleric members. A tribe will have either shamans or witch doctors, but not both, except cavemen. It is suggested that you include these figures into those tribes you personally determine, not random groups. Spell explanations. Spells with special commentary for refereeing. Some considerations, as well as practicality, make it impossible to give a concise list of each spell herein, with name, level, range, duration, area of effect, and so forth tabulated and then special notes appended. A playing aid of this sort will likely be done in the not-too-distant future, and that will serve your needs far better than a spread herein. There are, however, quite a number of special notes which you must be appraised of, as spells are often abused by players. The type of magic is given in the player's handbook in order that you may creatively develop material regarding spells. New spells, spell components, spell formulae, or even limitations due to magical repression or other reasons on certain types of spells in some areas. Likewise, specialists can be developed as non-player characters, basing their abilities around the type of magic involved. In short, the type of magic involved in the casting of each spell is there to give you flexibility and a foundation for creativity. Spell components for a spell are generally lost or used when the spell is cast. Exceptions, holy or unholy spell symbols, druid's mistletoe, et al. Commentary regarding certain spell follows, but be certain to read all of the material and have it at hand whenever a spell user casts a spell for which special considerations are noted. So we've got a list of spells and some considerations from them. So let's dive in. Cleric spells, 1st level spells. Detect evil, basically the degree of evil, faint, moderate, strong, overwhelming, and his general nature, expectant, malignant, gloating, etc., can be noted. If the evil is overwhelming, the general bent, lawful, neutral, chaotic, has a 10% chance per level of the cleric of being detectable. Detect magic. Only the fact that a dim or strong magic exists can be found by clerics. Cf. Magic user spells of the same name. Light. It should be noted that if a spell is cast upon the visage or before the visual organs of a creature, it will tend to blind it, rather as if a strong light were placed before its eyes, and its attacks and defenses will be at a -4 on 2-hit, saving throws, and even armor class. Note also that the spell is not mobile, although it can be cast upon a movable or mobile object or creature. Protection from evil. Note that this excludes, keeps out, monsters using natural or body weapon attacks which require touching the protected character. Second level spells. Augury. This is a general future determinant with only a half-hour maximum, so you need not be too exacting with regards to your vagueness. When the augury is cast, simply compare the knowledge you have and give the character general impressions of the question asked. Will we do well if we venture into the third level? Answer, those who survive will be rich. Basis, you have a terrible troll near where the character will enter the level. If he does, but the probable party is strong enough to beat it after a hard fight, and the monster guards 10,000 silver pieces and a +1 shield. Detect Charm. Charm spells cast by creatures entitled the Charmee to a saving throw versus magic, and if the saving throw is successful, the Detect Charm spell does not pick up the fact that the charm exists. Find Traps. This spell will be 10% likely per level of the cleric casting it to be able to note the type of magic involved, i.e. alteration, divination, etc., if it is a magical or magically concealed trap. Silence, 15-foot radius. If this spell is cast at a magic-resistant creature, and resistance works, silence does not encompass the creature. Turning of the spell in whole or in part will negate its effects, save for muting sound, if it is turned beyond its radius. Snake Charm. This spell will be effective against any ophidian or ophidianoid monster, such as a naga and coatl. Of course, hit point restrictions, resistance to magic, and saving throws apply at all times. Speak with animals. This spell will not necessarily make the animal type being conversed with the good and true friend of the cleric, so terseness and evasiveness are likely in basic hostile and reasonably intelligent creatures. The more stupid ones will make inane comments too. Remember to assume the role of an animal with the appropriate mentality and viewpoint. Third level spells. Animate Undead. It is of course possible to animate the skeletons or corpses of demi-human and humanoids as well as human sort. If creatures with more than a basic 1 hit die or 1+ hit die are so animated, the number of such skeletons or zombies will be determined in the hit dice rather than total numbers. Thus, a cleric of 6th level could animate 6 skeletons of human or humanoid sort which in life had less than 2 hit die, 3 such undead which in life had less than 3, but 2 or more hit die, or a single undead creature which had 6, but none less than 7 hit die. For each such additional hit die, the skeleton or zombie will gain another die. Thus, the animated skeleton of a fire giant, an 11 hit die monster, is 10 over the norm for a skeleton normally animated, so it would have 1 plus 10 hit dice, 11d8. Likewise, a fire giant zombie would have 10 dice over and above the sort of creature typically made into a zombie, so it would have 2 plus 10 hit dice, 12d8. NB. This does not enable a cleric to make skeletons or zombies of characters of 2nd or higher level have more hit die. Such undead are simply human skeletons or zombies with 1 or 2 hit dice, nothing more. Continual Light. As does a light spell, this will tend to blind a creature if it is placed on its visual sensory area. The spell can also be placed upon a smallish object and a light-proof case subsequently, used to encase the object so as to make it dark until the covering is removed, i.e. a continual light source which expends no fuel and will not blow out. Darkness spells are the bane of this device. Cure blindness. This spell will not restore lost visual organs, whether such cause is due to injury or disease. Thus, at your option, the spell can simply remove magical blindness and cure disease or disease-like conditions such as cataracts and glaucoma and various forms of nearsightedness, farsightedness, or astigmatisms, common to human eyes. Or it can be effective against other eye disorders as well, save those noted above. Dispel magic. If this spell is cast upon a magic item, it most certainly will have the effect of causing it to be non-operational for 1 round thereafter if the item does not make a saving throw. If the item is not in the possession of any creature, then the item gets no saving throw, and it is non-operational for 1 round. Note that artifacts and relics are not subject to this effect. Any dispel magic spell must be cast directly at the object, not anything or anyone else to be so effective. So you can't dispel magic on a Dragonlance, people. Glyph of Warding. If a cleric is on hand to determine that a glyph of warding is certainly in existence, an associated magic user can thereafter use any race spell and possibly, 50% plus 2% per level of the MU, remove the glyph. As to the design of the names of glyphs of warning, design your own, or use an encyclopedia to find interesting alphabets to use. You may refer also to the World of Greyhawk for other runes and glyphs. For example, here is one such series of glyphs named. So we can see fire, lightning, cold, blind, paralysis, energy, plus drain. As a detect trap spell will see the form of the glyph, a cleric might believe he or she knows the name of the glyph from past experience and try to bypass it, possibly with success. Locate object. This spell will not enable the caster to find a general class of objects unless the form is nearly the same as that of the majority of others in its class. Thus, stairs have risers and are generally similar. So by means of this spell, the caster would be able to locate a flight which closely resembles those he or she pictured in casting the locate object spell. However, attempting to find jewelry or a crown or the like requires a certain mental image, and if the image is not generally similar to the desired objects within range, the spell will not work, for the image is not familiar or similar to that of the real. In short, desired but unique objects cannot be located by this spell unless they are similar to objects known by the caster. Prayer. If a prayer spell is uttered while another cleric of the same deity is chanting, the effect of the two spells are cumulative, i.e., +2 for friendly creatures, -2 for foes. Note that the two spells must be cast by clerics of the same religious persuasion, not merely the same general alignment, and that the chant must be in progress while the prayer is said. Speak with dead. This spell is often subject to abuse due to too liberal DMing. When the cleric asks questions, follow these rules. 1. Give answers which are brief. 2. Take all questions absolutely literally. And 3. Be as evasive as possible if the questioned creature was not friendly to the characters or class or alignment of the spellcaster when it lived. Remember, speaking with the dead assumes that the creature has an essence which still exists somewhere, and if it can remember answers to questions, it can remember other things as well. 4th level spells. Detect Lie. This Dweomer does not reveal the truth, nor will it necessarily reveal evasions of the truth. It empowers the caster to detect a lie. 5th level spells. Atonement. As the all-in-all of the campaign milieu, you must assume the role of the supernatural powers judging the character making atonement. If the action appears to be very sincere, then the deity will be prone to allow atonement by means of the spell, with little or no sacrifice in addition, according to the deity's overall nature. So that could mean a few coins in the poor's box or a major quest for a relic. The less sincere the character, the greater will be the actions required to complete the spell, i.e., a hollow voice rings forth and commands, "Go forth from here and return not until you bring captive the high priest of Osiris and all of the altar service of his temple as sacrifices to me in token of the sincerity of your true repentance." And that will be the final word from the deity until the deed is accomplished. Commune. The questions permitted must be asked consecutively in as brief a period as possible, and there is too much blather and disturbance for the supernatural powers otherwise. If the spellcaster lags or go off to do anything else, the spell is broken, over and done with. Note that it is possible for a deity to answer, I don't know, as most deities are not omniscient. Really? Deities are not omniscient? Huh. I never thought about that. I always assumed they existed in all times and all places, and so they were omniscient as gods. Plane shift. The material component is similar to a tuning fork, of course, and striking it at the proper time allows the energy vibrations of the person or persons, or creatures involved to match those of the desired plane. All you need to do is determine which notes, if you will, attune to which planes, and then when the caster has a metal rod, inform him or her of the note it sounds. An A sharp, for instance, might take one to the astral plane, while an A flat will move one to the elemental plane of air, and an A to the ethereal plane. Naturally, you can include the octave and even have chords to move a creature to some subplane, i.e. F sharp minor might move the caster or the subject to the ninth plane of hell. Quest. If the person quested agrees to a task, even though this agreement might have been gained by force or trickery, then any chance of avoiding the quest, the saving throw, is negated. Those of the same religion as the cleric are not able to avoid a just and deserved quest either, and even those of the same alignment having to undertake a just and proper quest must have a -4 if they wish to avoid it. A quest can be negated by a cleric of greater level than the one which placed the spell, if the cleric so doing is of the same religion as the quested creature. Some artifacts or relics can probably negate the spell, and any deity can do so, but only directly. 6th level spells. Aerial Servant. The spellcaster should be required to show you what form of protective inscription he or she has used when the spell is cast. The 3 forms are mentioned as the magic circle, the pentagram, or the thaumaturgic triangle. Blade Barrier. This spell is absolutely stationary. It does not move in any way, except with respect to the circling of the blades around the fixed point of the spellcaster. The plane of rotation of the blades can be horizontal, vertical, or anything in between, however. Note that creatures within the area of the barrier, when it's invoked, are entitled to a saving throw, and if the save is made, the blades are avoided and no damage is taken. I'm just imagining a Neo moment of him bending backwards, evading blades as it's spinning around him. Conjure Animals. For the list of these creatures, see Appendix L, Conjured Animals. Find the Path. This spell is subject to the same sort of abuse as Locate Object spell. A locale is not an object. The spell will enable the caster to find a way into or out of some area, but this area must be known or identified in itself, not for what it might house. Thus, one could use it to find a great forest of ash trees, but not to find a forest where a green dragon lived. In the latter case, the desire is to find an object, not an area or locale. Similarly, use of a Find the Path spell to locate the way to a hoard of platinum pieces is absolutely useless, as it must not be allowed. But the spell could be used to find a level known to have such a hoard of coins, or a cavern with a pool in it might be pointed to, etc. The spell finds a way to a locale or an area, and whatever objects are therein are not meaningful to the spell. Heal. This spell will not cure serious forms of mental disorders not related to spells or inflicted by injury to the brain. Word of Recall. For each plane that the cleric is removed from the plane of his or her designated sanctuary, there is a 10% cumulative chance that the cleric will be irrevocably lost in the intervening astral or ethereal spaces. 7th level spells. Astral Spell. Any magic items can go into the astral plane, but most will become non-magical thereon or on any plane removed from the prime material plane. Those which contain spells which you determine will function on any given plane will function on that plane. Armor and weapons which are +3 or better might also function on other planes, but this is at your option. Allow artifacts and relics should be allowed to function anywhere. Items which draw their power from a particular plane will be likely to be far more powerful on the plane from whence their power comes, e.g., a ring of fire resistance on the elemental plane of fire, or a sword of life stealing on the negative material plane. For creatures encountered, see Appendix C, Random Monster Encounters, Astral and Ethereal Encounter Tables. Control weather. To find the prevailing conditions at the time the spell is cast, you must know the climate and the season, of course. Sky conditions, cloudy, foggy, partly cloudy, clear, precipitation, wind speed and direction, and temperature must be determined according to the area. Knowing this, you should have no great problem informing the would-be spellcaster as to what sort of weather exists. This is what I love about Dragonlance so much, is that they went to such great lengths as to show you weather patterns. I mean, that's awesome. That's really great. So, I mean, just weather patterns alone are worth the purchase of, what is that? It's the map collection. Oh, the original one. Sorry, I'm stretching. All right, well, I can't remember it right now on my... I got a shield up here blocking my view on my bookshelf. Earthquake. Structures very solidly built, with foundations reaching to bedrock, will sustain half damage. Castles so built will take only 1/4 damage if they score above 50% on the saving throw roll. An earth elemental in the spell area has the effect of negating 10 to 100% of the spell effects, d10, 0 equals 100%. If the elemental is of forces opposed to the cleric casting the earthquake spell. Gate. Unless you have some facts regarding the minions serving the being called forth by the casting of the gate spell, it is necessary to have the being called come. Then, if it is a trifle, it can leave or attack. If it is of middling importance, it can take some positive action to set matters aright and then demand appropriate repayment, and if the matter is urgent, it can act according and ask whatever it is want thereafter if appropriate. However, Asmodeus might send a pit fiend to see what the problem was, and some deity of lawful good might send a Krynn or on the same mission. As to the likelihood of the gated being returning without doing something, use a factor of 20% for a trifling matter, 15% of return if the affair is of medial importance, and from 1% to 50% if the matter is of very important. 1% indicating that the being finds itself well able to handle the situation, and everything pleases or displeases it greatly, 50%, if the situation would be risky and it is displeased. Thus, Asmodeus, summoned by a party of chaotic good characters to save them from a type 6 demon, would be a trifle to an important act, depending on what was involved, such as a relic of lawful evil. Asmodeus would certainly do away with the summoners as well as the demon if at all possible. On the other hand, Asmodeus summoned to pit himself against Bahamut would be very likely to turn and do a speedy exit, unless the matter was of uncritical importance to hell. Holy or unholy word. The speaker must be from the plane upon which it speaks in order to have the utterance send other creatures to their own plane, i.e., a devil on the prime material plane could not use the spell to send away anything, although it could do so if it were in hell. Creatures sent to the original plane cannot return for 1 day. Creatures slowed by such a spell lose their first round of attack and each odd-numbered round of attack thereafter until the duration of the effect wears off. Restoration. This spell will cure any and all forms of insanity. That's the end of the cleric spell clarifications, and now it's time for the druid spells. I do want to give a quick note that this is errata. What's great about these new releases of the first edition Player's Handbook, Dungeon Master's Guide, and Monster Manual is that they have included all of the errata from all of the Dragon magazines, through all of history, and updated all of the content herein with all of that news. So this entire section here feels very much like it's errata from those sources, rather than I don't know. It may be in the original Dungeon Master's Guide. I don't remember. I haven't looked at the original one since I was a kid. But it does feel like it's sort of just tacked in here because of that. Druid spells. First level spells. Detect magic. Only the fact that a dim or a strong magic exists in the area will be noted. CF magic user spell the same name. Locate animals. This spell is another which requires a bit of effort on the part of the DM, as it is quite unlikely that each and every species of animal in the area of the spellcaster will be recorded. You will have to use the probabilities of your milieu. Obviously, there is 0% chance of locating a polar bear in the jungle, or a jungle cat in a cavern thousands of feet below ground, etc. So the locale is second after the region as to whether or not some animal will be within spell range. Then, consider the terrain. Mountain lions do not typically roam the prairies, for instance. Lastly, consider the frequency of the animal desired in a relation to all of the above. If the animal is within the area of probability, allow a straight percentile roll for frequency. Commons 50% chance, uncommon 25% chance, and rare is 10% chance. Very rare is only 5% chance. Circumstances will always prevail, so modify as necessary to allow for the surroundings. Speak with animals. As noted for the cleric spell, the same name, QV, this magic will not make the animal altogether friendly and cooperative. Second level spells. Animal friendship. This spell will only function if the druid actually wishes to be the animal's friend. If the druid has ulterior motives, the animals always sense it. Charm person or mammal. If at the same time this spell is cast, the subject is struck by any spell, missile, or weapon which inflicts damage, the creature will make its saving throw at +1 per point of damage sustained. Naturally, this assumes damage is inflicted by members of the spellcaster's party. Remember that charmed creatures or person's priorities are changed as regards the spellcaster, but the charmed one's basic personality and alignment are not. The spell is not enslave person or mammal. A request that a charmee make itself defenseless, or that he, she, or it be required to give up a valued item, or cast a valuable spell, or use a charge on a valued item, especially against the charmee's former associates or allies, could allow an immediate saving throw to see if the charm is thrown off. In like manner, a charmed figure will not necessarily tell everything he, she, or it knows or draw maps of entire areas. A charmed figure can refuse a request, if such refusal is in character and will not directly cause harm to the charmer. Also, a charm spell does not substantially alter the charmee's feelings toward the charmer's friends and allies. The charmed person or creature will not react well to the charmer's allies making suggestions like, ask him a question. The charmee is oriented toward friendship and acceptance of the charmer, but this does not mean that he, she, or it will put up with verbal or physical abuse from the charmer's associates. Create water. It is not possible to create water within living material, i.e., it is not possible to cast a spell upon a creature and create liquid in any part of its body. Feign death. The recipient of this dweomer consumes air at 1/100th of the normal rate. Any poison within the system of the spell recipient is effectively slowed so as to cause no harm whatsoever for the duration of the spell. I just imagine the nightmare gaming scenarios where the players are complaining about these spells so much that the DMs had to write Dragon Magazine and they then had to come out with these rulings. Like, I can create water, so I just create water inside the head cavity of the monster. And it kills them, you know? And they're just arguing back and forth. Fire trap. The spell can be removed, negated by a dispel magic as is normal. Heat metal. Elfin chainmail is not subject to the spell. All Ferris-based magic armor is entitled to a saving throw versus magical fire. If the save is successful, the heated metal spell does not affect it. Locate plants. For the likelihood of any given plant type to be used within the area of the spell, consult the foregoing discussion regarding the spell Locate Animals. It will generally be more difficult to adjudicate matters botanically. However, as the distribution of plant species is not as widely known as that of animals, As a rule, most herbs will grow only in temperate regions, most spices in tropical regions. If you have never heard of the plant, assume it is rare or very rare and give appropriate percentages. Obscurement. A gust of wind spell will cause the vapor to swirl and dissipate in 25% of the normal time, so that instead of the obscurement lasting for 4 rounds per level, it will last for but 1 round per level, once the gust of wind has been cast, of course. Produce flame. If the druid chooses to hurl the flame, treat it as a missile, but any target is considered to be at short range. If a miss occurs, use the grenade-like missile principle to determine where the flame strikes. Warp wood. Attempting to affect the wood of a magically held or wizard-locked door is another matter. The level of the druid is compared to the level of the magic user, and only if the latter is of lower level than the former will the spell have any chance of working. For each level of experience greater than the magic user, the druid has a 20% chance of warping dweomered wood. 3rd level spells. Call lightning. If a djinn or an air elemental is on hand to form a whirlwind, the druid is able to summon half-strength lightning strikes therefrom. Snare. The material of the noose can be cut with any magic blade or non-magical sharp instrument when a 2-hit bonus of +2 or better. Summon insects. If thick smoke or hot flames are near the target creatures, the insects called forth will not go near the intended victim. Those who might are considered dazed or burned to a crisp. The spell thus fails. Likewise, if the victim steps into such an area, all insects are gone that instant, so that next round it may act normally. Tree. Note that the druid can appear as a conifer, bush, etc. The arm class of such a plant is that of the druid, and its hit points are likewise those of the druid. 4th level spells. Animal Summoning 1. For probable animals in the area, see foregoing commentary on locate animals. The animals typically summoned are, and it shows a list here. And we have continuation of the list right here. Summonable only by specific type of animal. You will note the animals with 4+N hit die are included. If the druid names such an animal type, allow summoning if otherwise indicated, but limit the number appearing to 1 to 3. Call woodland being. These sorts of creatures are the type which should generally be indicated on area maps as to location and numbers. However, if by chance you are faced with the problem of a druid casting the spell where such information is not at hand, use the following random percentage possibilities. And we've got a bit of a chart right here. Add 1% per level of the druid casting the spell, except where 0%. Check in order for each type by rolling percentile dice, and if at the end of the list nothing is indicated, there are no woodland beings within spell range. For example, a 10th level druid begins the spell in a sylvan wood. There is a 30% chance for brownies, but the dice roll shows 35, so none come. Then a 40% chance for centaurs, gets a dice score of 72, but finally, a 35% chance of dryads gets a dice roll of 10. So from 1 to 4 dryads will come. Since the call was successful, no further checks are made. Dispel magic. See the comments of the cleric's spell of the same name for the effects of the spell upon an item. Hallucinatory forest. Touching the illusory growth will neither inform the individual as to its nature, nor will it affect the magic. 5th level spells. Transmute rock to mud. Rate of sinking is 1 foot per segment, i.e. 1 foot per 6 seconds, or 10 feet per minute, a round. Brush thrown upon the surface will stop sinking of creatures able to climb atop it. Use discretion as to the amount of brush and the weight of creatures. Ropes can be used to pull creatures out of the mire, assuming the sufficient power is available. 1 man per man, 10 men per horse, or vice versa. Wall of Fire. It is not possible for the spellcaster to move at all and maintain concentration on the Wall of Fire. 6th level spells. Anti-animal shell. This shell is non-mobile. Humans, even though able to use magic, are non-magical, as are dwarves, elves, etc. Conjure fire elemental. A holy unholy word will send any elemental back to its plane. Fire seeds. As with missiles of the type produced by a produce flame spell, all fire seed missiles are considered to be short range, and misses are handled as described in the grenade-like missiles subsection of combat. Turn wood. Even magical weapons with wood sections will be turned. An anti-magic shell will protect from the spell, and a dispel magic will have normal chances of wiping out its effects. Wall of Thorns. Dexterity bonus to armor class is not considered in this case. If a wall of fire results from the burning of the thorns, the side towards the druid will be the non-harmful one. 7th level spells. Chariot of Sustair. This vehicle and its steeds are from the elemental plane of fire. Therefore, they are subject to forced return to this plane, such as by dispel magic, holy or unholy word, etc. Conjure Earth Elemental. As noted regarding fire elementals, a holy unholy word will send the creature back to its own plane. Firestorm. The reverse Fire Quench will cause a flame tongue, flaming sword to be extinguished unless it makes a successful save throw versus a crushing blow. Once extinguished, thus the weapon becomes non-magical. Oof, that's brutal. Reincarnation. Regardless of the form of the creature in which the character is reincarnated, allow the new form to progress as far as possible in characteristics and abilities. For example, a badger character would grow to giant size, have maximum hit points, plus bonus points for high constitution and the intelligence level of its former character. A centaur reincarnation might eventually gain hit dice up to 5, 6, 7, or even 8, and would be eligible to wear armor, use magical items, etc. Alright, let's see if I can get through Magic User, because that is where we are right now. I think that might be the last section, too. Let's see here. Yep. I think I can do it. Sorry, I start to get tongue-tied the longer I read in a straight, session here. Magic User spells, first level spells, Charm Person. Attacks causing damage upon the subject person will cause a saving throw bonus of +1 per hit point of damage sustained in the round that the charm is cast. Comprehend languages, the reverse confuse languages, can be cast upon a scroll to make it unreadable, but a second comprehend languages spell will then succeed. Detect magic. This spell detects the intensity of the magic. Dim, faint, moderate, strong, very strong, intense, and there is a 10% chance per level of the caster that the type, abjuration, alteration, etc., can be found as well, although if a dual type, the detection percentage applies to both and must be rolled for separately. Enlarge. All garments and equipment worn by a subject of this spell should be considered to automatically drop off its held by straps or let me read that again. All garments and equipment worn by a subject of the spell should be considered to automatically drop off if held by straps or fasteners, otherwise to split away during growth, so it is not possible to squeeze someone to death in their armor by means of an enlarge. Material components possessed will not change size. Coats of mail, however, will be ruined if growth occurs while worn. Note that you can opt to make a target wearing objects an impossible task for an enlarged spell unless the character is actually touched so as to distinguish the creature from the objects. I don't know why. I could have sworn when we read the spell enlarge it said everything on you goes with it. But I guess not. Rin, Arizona, thanks for joining live. I appreciate you. Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Erase. This spell might be useful against a glyph of warding. QV. Find familiar. If the magic user opts to send away a familiar, he or she may never again find another until the former is killed or dies. Purposely killing or causing to be killed a familiar or former familiar is most likely to find great disfavor with the gods, assuming, of course, that this pertains to the magic user and his or her associated familiar. Note that spell duration concerns the finding of the familiar. Once it is found, the familiar will serve until killed. To determine animal availability, see the 4th level druid spell, Animal Summoning 1. Light. This spell can effectively blind an opponent, as noted under commentary in the cleric spell of the same name. Message. This is not a tongues spell, and speech will be as normal for the spellcaster. All right, check this out. We got a little illustration here. Got the wizard and two knights or two warriors holding the wizard's cat familiar. One false move, wizard, and your familiar gets it. I love that stuff. Protection from evil. This spell prevents attacks which employ parts of the body of affected creatures. CF, cleric spell of the same name. You won't believe this, but I smell freshly buttered popcorn. Like someone is making popcorn in my house and the smell is coming through the vents and it is hitting my nose. And let me tell you something. It smells amazing. It's torture, actually. Sleep. Oh, did I do? Yeah, I did. Sleep. Unless a single creature is designated as the target of a sleep spell in a mixed group, the sleep spell will first affect the lowest level hit die targets. Tensor's floating disc. The caster cannot ride on the disc. The disc always follows the magic user. Unseen servant. The created force has no shape, so it cannot be clothed. There's so many people trying to put clothes on their unseen servant, apparently. Right. Ink for use with this spell is only 10% likely to be located at any given apothecary or alchemist in a town, or double that for a city. Ink will come in a flask, which will be sufficient to inscribe 2 to 4 spells. The cost will be 200 to 500 gold pieces. You should devise whatever formula for manufacture of this substance you desire. Ichor or slithering tracker, octopus ink, and powdered gems are a fair place to start from. Second level spells. Detect evil. The magic detects only in the intensity of the evil. CF, cleric spell of the same name. Invisibility. See the invisibility section under the adventure. Locate object. See the cleric spell of the same name for complete commentary. Rope trick. Those climbing the rope and gaining the safety of the extra-dimensional space are able to see out of it clearly, as if they were observed through a window of about 3 foot width by 3 foot height. Those outside cannot see in. Stinking cloud. A gust of wind spell will blow this away in 1 round after contact. If it is cast in a place where this is considerable air movement, the stinking cloud will move in the direction of the air current at from 1 inch to 6 inches per round, depending on air speed. For each 1 inch of such movement, shorten its duration by 1 round. Web. If this spell is cast within 2 firm anchored places, the webs collapse and entangle themselves, effectively negating the spell. If this spell is cast without 2 firm anchoring places. Wizard's Lock. The caster can always pass through his or her own wizard-locked portal freely. I'd hate to be that player that's like, but I'm the one who put the wizard-locked door on it. And the DM's like, well, I'm sorry, but it's wizard-locked, so you can't enter. But I'm the one who put it. You know, I mean, that was the only reason why this or any sort of warning label occurs on any packaging ever is because someone did that thing they're telling you not to do. So someone tried to pull this shitty little game of, you can't enter that because it's wizard locked. Third level spells. Dispel magic. For the effect of this spell on a magic item, see the cleric spell of the same name. Feign death. For the rate of air consumption and effects on poisoning, see the cleric spell of the same name. Gust of wind. This spell is particularly useful against such spells as obscurement, stinking cloud, and cloud kill. QQV. Lightning bolt. Note that physical damage is not exceptional, so that if a solid wall is struck, the bolt effectively rebounds its full remaining distance. If it strikes a barrier which is shattered, broken through by the force of the stroke, then the bolt continues beyond. Monster Summoning 1. For a list of monsters summoned, see Appendix M, Summoned Monsters. Phantasmal Force. The magic user must know of and understand the force creature he or she is making an illusion of. Thus, if the caster has never cast a fireball or has never seen a dragon turtle, his illusion of such will be very poor. Oh, how great would a phantasmal force be if you've never seen it, and so it just looks like a pencil drawing of a Death Knight. Like the stick figures of a Death Knight instead of like an actual Death Knight, because you've never seen it and you're just like, I don't know, this is what it looks like, kind of. It's got like a big smiley face. That could be hilarious. Protection from evil, 10-foot radius. As heretofore noted, this spell prevents use of body weaponry by affected creatures. 4th level spells. Charm Monster. It is needful to point out that this spell does not suddenly empower the caster, or his or her associate characters with any special means of communications. If the caster is unable to convey to the charmed creature his or her instructions, then the monster will simply refrain from harming the spellcaster, and others in the area, if any, will still be able to subject to its attentions, hostile or otherwise. Similar to a charm person spell, if damage is inflicted on the charmee at the same time, round, as the spell is cast, then the saving throw is made at +1 for each 1 point of damage so inflicted. Dig. This spell will inflict 5 to 20 hit points of damage if cast upon a clay golem. Extension 1. This spell must be cast after the spell to be extended, whether by another spell user during the same round, or the initial spellcaster or another immediately preceding the casting of the extension. If a round elapses, the extension goes for naught. Fire Trap. A Dispel magic has the possibility stated to remove the fire trap. If it fails to do so, the trap is not affected and is not triggered. Minor Globe of Invulnerability. The globe gives off a faint shimmering when it forms. 3rd level spells from devices, fireballs, or lightning, for example, will not penetrate its sphere. Monster Summoning 2. For a list of monsters summoned, see Appendix M, Summoned Monsters. Polymorph Others. As is continually pointed out, henchmen and hirelings will not desire to be subjected to the effects of this spell. Furthermore, level of experience is not a part of a charm character's form, so it is quite foolish and totally impossible to attempt to polymorph a creature into an nth level character. Likewise, profession is not form, so attempting to polymorph to a fighter, thief, etc. results in human form and nothing more. Shape changers, lycanthropes, deities, druids, vampires, certain dragons, jackal-wearers, doppelgamers, mimics, et al. Will be affected for but 1 round, then will return to their former form. Rary's Mnemonic Enhancer. When this is used to gain additional lower level spells, the magic user must then memorize the spells and equip himself or herself with the requisite components. Wizard Eye. The ocular device magically formed has substance, as it has form, which might be detected, cf. Invisibility. Solid objects prevent the passage of a wizard's eye, although it can pass through a space no larger than a small mouse hole, about 1/2 inch diameter. 5th level spells. Animate Dead. See the cleric's spell of the same name for a detailed commentary. Cloud Kill. The caster is about to cast a spell so that it forms around him or her if this is desired. However, any creature staying within the cloud for more than 1 round, even though they have 7 or more hit dice per levels, will take 1 to 10 hit points of damage on the second and each succeeding round. Conjure Elemental. See the cleric spell Aerial Servant for details of protective inscriptions. Contact Other Planes. See the section on Insanity. Extension 2. See Extension 1 above. Leomund's Secret Chest. For a list of random creatures which might come from the ethereal plane, see Appendix C, Random Monster Encounters. Monster Summoning 3. For a list of monsters summoned, see Appendix M, Summoned Monsters. Transmute Rock to Mud. For commentary, see the druid spell of the same name. Wall of Force. A rod of cancellation or a sphere of annihilation will bring down the wall of force, the former being used fully in the process, and the latter drawing any and all small objects into its vortex in the process. Small objects are those weighing less than 100 gold pieces and within 1 inch radius of the sphere. The diamond dust for the spell must be the equivalent of stones, if not less than 10,000 gold piece value. Wall of Iron. If the wall of iron is created vertically, there is a 50% chance either way for it falling left or right, ahead or backwards, depending on its placement. It would take not less than 30 strength points with at least 400 pounds mass to affect this probability, and then only 1% for each pound over 300 or strength point over 30. If the caster concentrates specially, it is possible to double the area by halving the thickness. Wall of stone. Any use of the wall as a bridge must be arched and buttressed. This will require 50% of the total volume of the wall. See, a 20th level magic user normally may create 400 square feet in surface area, 3 feet thick. To use it as a bridge, only 200 square feet can be considered, so a span 5 feet wide and 40 feet long could be made, assuming the chasm to be bridged was about 38 feet wide. Unsupported spans will automatically collapse of their own weight if over 20 feet across. 6th level spells. Anti-magic shell. It must be pointed out that creatures on their own plane are normal creatures, so this spell cast upon ethereal plane of fire, for example, would hedge out none of the creatures of the plane. Control weather. For commentary on this spell, see the cleric spell of the same name. Death spell. Creatures with less than 1 hit die count as only 1/2 a creature would otherwise have less than 2 hit dice. If such creatures are subjected to the spell, count them off thusly, although the maximum number affected cannot exceed 80 in any event. Enchant an item. When casting the permanency spell on an item, the magic user need only roll 2 or better with d20 to avoid loss of a constitution point. Formula for magic items are suggested under Fabrication of Magic Items, QV. Extension 3. See Extension 1. Geese. The casting time is also the total time the magic user has to word the geese spell. It is otherwise similar to a quest, QV. Glassy. The strength of the glassy area is the same as that of the original material. Monster Summoning 4. For a list of monsters summoned, see Appendix M, Summoned Monsters. Move Earth. The practical limitation on the area of effect of this spell is 24 inches squared area, with 4 hours of casting time, exclusive to elemental conjuration. Otaluk's Freezing Sphere. The sling stone-sized application of this spell has a 4-inch range of hurled by hand, if hurled by hand, otherwise as a sling bullet. All ranges like my tongue is getting tied here. All ranges by hand are short, otherwise treated as a slung missile. Use the grenade-like missiles table to find where misses strike. Reincarnation. See the cleric spell of the same name for commentary on this spell. Spirit Rack. Only one specially illuminated vellum sheet may be prepared by the magic user and be in his or her possession and or control at the same time. This will be realized by any magic user as soon as the second has begun. It is not possible to have 2 such sheets naming the same being either, as the magic of the naming would be held within the first, but as soon as the second is made, it would go therein. Finally, no creature can make such a sheet naming itself. Stone to Flesh. In casting this spell upon a stone block, the magic user can cause the area of effect to be cylindrical if so desired, so a passage can be thus made. Maximum diameter is 3 feet, minimum 1 foot. 7th level spells. Draumige's Instant Summons. The special jewel used will have a magically created inscription naming the object it will summon. The inscription is invisible and readable only by means of a read magic spell at all but the caster of the spell. Readable only by means of a read magic spell to all but the caster of the spell. Items contained with a Leomund's secret chest are not subject to this spell. Duo Dimension. See Appendix C, Random Monster Encounters, Astral and Ethereal Encounters table. Monster Summoning 5. For a list of monsters summoned, see Appendix M, Summoned Monsters. Phase Door. This spell provides an escape route for high-level magic users, although phase spiders can see and use it with ease. A gem of seeing, and true sight will reveal the presence of a phase door. 8th level spells. Clone. Only humans, demi-humans, and humanoids may be cloned. Glass steel. The armor class of the substance is 1. Monster summoning 6. For a list of monsters summoned, see Appendix M, Summoned Monsters. Permanency. There is only a 5% chance of the spellcaster actually losing a point of constitution if the spell is cast upon a non-living thing. Certan's spell immunity. Although it should be rather obvious, the spell works against nearly any form of enchantment or charm. Thus, and we have a little chart here, forget, hypnotize, rave, enfeeblement is +9, antipathy, sympathy, confusion, mass suggestion is +7, chaos, feeble mind, Otto's irresistible dance is +5. Any other such spells can be adjudicated from the list in the player's handbook and herein. 9th level spells. Astral spell. See the cleric spell of the same name for commentary. Gate. See the cleric spell of the same name for commentary. Imprisonment. To find what number of creatures are freed, roll percentile dice to find the density of imprisoned creatures before rolling for the number. Multiply the first roll by the second, rounding any remainders to the nearest whole. For each such creature freed, there is only a 10% chance that it will be in the area of the spell caster. Use the random monster tables of Appendix C for these. Use D20 for level, any number of 9 or higher indicating a 9th level monster. Monster summoning 7. For a list of monsters summoned, see Appendix M, Summoned Monsters. Prismatic Sphere. At the commencement of this spell, each color is shimmering, but each represents a successive layer, rather like an onion. The first must be brought down before the second can be affected, etc. Any creature passing through gets the effect of each and every color layer still existing. Time stop. Use a stopwatch or silent count to time this. The caster must be able to complete his or her actions before spell duration expires, or else he or she will likely be found in an embarrassing act. The use of a teleport spell just before the spell duration of the time stop expires is permissible. All right. The last one is illusionist spells. And this one is not very long, so I think I can finish it before I stop this session. First level spells, Gaze Reflection. The creature that has its gaze reflected by the spell is entitled to a saving throw. Light. This spell can effectively blind an opponent, as noted in the commentary of the cleric spell of the same name. Second level spells. Detect Magic. For commentary on this spell, see the cleric spell of the same name, not the magic user spell. Fog Cloud. A gust of wind spell will dissipate the cloud in a single round. Invisibility. See the section on invisibility for commentary. Third level spells. Illusionary Script. The cost of the lead-based ink is 100 to 400 gold pieces, plus the alchemist's profit of 100 gold pieces. Invisibility, 10-foot radius. See the invisibility section. Rope Trick. See the magic user spell of the same name for commentary. Fourth level spells. Improved Invisibility. Improved invisibility has the effect of moving considerations for detection of such invisibility downwards by 2 places compared to other forms of invisibility. See invisibility for commentary. Phantasmal Killer. If the affected individual is somehow brought to an unconscious state, the spell cannot do harm. 5th level spells. Shadow Door. The invisibly fleeing illusionist can be detected, CF invisibility, but there must be active and concentrated efforts to do so. This will not simply be noticed in passing, as attention will be on the shadow door. Shadow Magic. The caster is actually tapping a power source, even though the majority of the spell is illusion, thus the 1 hit point of damage per level of the caster. 6th level spells. Conjure Animals. For a list of animals, see Appendix L, Conjured Animals. Demi Shadow Magic. This spell also allows the caster to tap a source of power as noted under Shadow Magic. 7th level spells. Astral Spell. See Appendix C, Random Monster Encounters, Astral and Ethereal Encounter Tables, for a list of creatures which can be met. Vision. Consider this spell similar to Contact Other Planes for handling purposes. Unrelated visions should contain some cryptic clue as to what the caster is seeing, even on a 10 or better, but be certain to make the vision as unclear and indirect as possible. Final note. Remember that the reverse of any spell must be separately memorized, and that each requires special components. And that is the end of the character spells section. The next section we'll cover next time is going to be the adventure, and we're going to get into all sorts of stuff on that. Now, I do want to give you a little bit of my plan here. I'm going to read through the Dungeon Master's Guide, and I'm actually going to hit a lot of the monster manual as well. I'm not going to read every monster's description, but I'm going to read the introduction and any sort of salient information that's not monster specific. The point of doing that is to give you again, I'm going to scroll through the monsters so we can look at them and enjoy their illustrations and stuff. The point of this is to give us a firm grounding on Advanced Dungeons & Dragons as the standalone game. And then ultimately, I'm going to read the Dragonlance Adventures book for first edition, but that's only going to be for channel members. So if you're not a channel member, you may want to hear that reading, you're going to have to, sorry, my throat is dry. You're going to want to become a member, and membership for the reading levels is like $4 or something like that a month. So it's totally up to you. I totally respect it if you don't want to, but I do want to just put it out there that, that stuff helps the channel go, and, helps me. Like I create, and I don't know if everyone knows this, I actually hire people to perform the music, and then I put it all together and I release it as a music track on the channel. So those types of activities cost a significant amount of money. You'd be surprised, but people don't want to do things for free. Who would have thought? And so, the money that I make off this, the membership for the YouTube channel and all the views and ad revenue, that all goes right back into creating those music tracks. And it's because I'm not a musician, and so I can't do it myself. But it's a huge part of Dragonlance, is the music side of it. And I want to include that, and I want to have that out there. So I'll eventually get around to the recipes and stuff, and I can do all that stuff myself. But the music part of it, I have to hire out. So all of it goes to say that membership is feeding right back into what the members get, and that is more Dragonlance specific content. So that is it for this episode of Gaming Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. What did you think about character spells? What did you think about the hireling or the henchman system? Let me know in the comments, or you can always email me at dlsaga@pm.me. I'm able to create these weekly videos because of your attention and support. If you're not already a member of this YouTube channel, I'd invite you to consider becoming one. If you'd like to pick up any edition of Dragonlance gaming materials, feel free to use my affiliate link in the description. And they're having a sale right now, Black Friday through Cyber Monday, so check that out. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the Dragonlance Saga, and I hope you'll join me in the celebration. Thank you for watching. This has been Adam with Dragonlance Saga, and until next time, Slanjavar.